Hi everyone, Washy1 here with another Behind the DM screen as I recount my tabletop sessions, the highs and lows, in the hopes that you might actually learn a thing or two. This time it's the epic tale of Dawnstar, the Cursed Blade, Reaper of Souls. But this time I was the player and not the DM, with this time two lessons to be taught, one as a player and one as a DM. One, as a player, if you don't pay attention, sometimes you inadvertently doom the entire world. And as a DM, sometimes playing it quiet can lead to amazing results. Back in my late years of primary school to mid-school, I was introduced to the wonderful world of Dungeons and Dragons through a mutual friend of ours. Our group made up a group of about, I think, 5 or 6 players, with some people coming in and out over the time. I would be getting into rolling into the dice and going on grand quests while learning fractions and studying Italian. I'm sure there were other classes, but honestly, I can't really remember much of my high school years other than being outside the table of rolling some dice. There's a bit of a trend of me not remembering and not paying attention. Naturally, with all of our adventures, it came to an end and it was time to start a new grand adventure. I had recently played a bard, a druid, a paladin, and even a wizard, so it was time to change things up a bit. Reading through the books and notes that my DM had provided, since I couldn't afford the material at the time, eventually I came across the rules for a Kenesai, and I knew instantly this class was for me. Now, the quick elevator sales pitch for a Kenesai is basically think a swordsman that specialises in one weapon. Not weapon type, but a specific weapon, which is important for this tale. Pitched the idea to my DM, who for this story we will call Steve to protect the innocent, or in this case the evil mastermind. I pitched the idea of my character being a Kenesai with the love of one weapon. He liked it, but he mentioned if I was RPing a character that would only be using one weapon, that would limit the amount of loot that I would have, and I would be theoretically stuck with this blade. But this had already crossed my mind, and I had mentioned I would be fine with passing on all the weapons, as I was going to be the master of this one particular blade, a blade that I had grown up with. A couple of days later, a handful of character sheets, some rolled dice, and Richard was born. A legendary sword Kenesai. And his chosen blade of choice? A rapier. The reason I chose the rapier? Well, back when I was a kid, there was movies with amazing swordsmen, and all the best ones that really sung out to me were amazing swordsmen that always used a rapier, doing that cool little thing where they would flick their blade and you'd see it go off flying around, and they're like, that's the guy I want my guy to be. Yeah, that little... that thing. That's what I wanted to do. Now, little did I know that Steve was a master fan of anti-tropes, or subverting the expectations. And this was a time before the shows like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, or movies like Scream, or even anime like Madoka had come out that would take common trends and flip it on their heads. Little did I know he had that planned for Richard. The problem for Steve was he had me as his player. A player that, unfortunately, due to some horrendous dice rolls, we wouldn't even see the beginnings of this for about 6 sessions for when I finally got my first kill. Yeah, I actually did not get a single kill for 6 sessions. I was cursed, my dice were just not with me, and every other killing blow was done by the party. I'd be able to hit them, but I just couldn't finish the job. I always remember Steve's narration as I finally got my first killing blow. Richard dives into combat, dodging, bobbing, and weaving. He strikes out with his rapier, striking the bandit straight in the heart. As he pulls the blade out, it comes out clean, without a single drop of blood. Awesome! I guess I don't have to clean the blade or wash any blood off my clothes. Sucks to be you guys. Look, it didn't seem like that big of a deal at the time, but little did I know that this was the first breadcrumb that was being dropped that something was up. And then came the next. Then came the next encounter with a bunch of orcs, and I'll remember the narration. Richard's blade slices the orc chieftain right across the throat. Instantly, his body goes stiff as it falls, not even attempting to cover the wound that's crossed his throat, not even making noises as he falls. And again, clean, without blood. Even though that it's a gaping large wound across his neck, the table sits quietly, looking towards me, Richard, for the reaction. You know, guys, I must be one hell of a swordsman. I am able to kill cleanly, not making my opponents suffer. You know, I'm just too talented. What can I say?
Stop it. Get some help.
As Richard started accruing more and more kills, more and more emphasis was being put on the lack of blood. That seemed to be the big calling card, like a big warning sign that something was up, but yet it just kept going right over my head. I wasn't really clicking in on it. I thought I was being just awesome, but eventually I started to wonder myself. After deep deliberation and contemplation and talking over with the party, I came to the one obvious conclusion: that I must be a magical swordsman. So with the mystery solved in my head, I went to every sage and wizard and magical user I could think of to try and figure out if I was cursed. And of course all of them came up with a clean bill of health, so naturally I accepted that I must be just a magical swordsman and dubbed myself Richard the Clean, able to provide any clean death. I can only imagine the frustration or delight that was going through Steve's head. Sessions later, countless bloodless baths later, it all came to a climax with the BBEG, a necromancer called Krog the Defiler, whom had been gathering bodies en masses. Our party had been chasing Krog across the land for sessions and sessions on end, and eventually we encountered him at his tower. This was going to be the climax. This is where the adventure was going to come to an end. We entered his chamber. Krog had risen above all, pointed out directly to Richard himself, and thanked him for bringing the tool that would end the world. Naturally, Richard just took this as Krog requesting a one-on-one duel, and not really understanding what was at stake and what he was implying. The battle begins. All the party members are squaring off against Krog's minions. Krog is rising, his ritual beginning, his eyes glowing, he's chanting in tongues. Richard couldn't fly, Richard didn't have any magic, but he had his sword. And I declared that Richard was going to throw his blade. Grabbed my dice, rolled. Natural 20. My blade left the hand and Krog was impaled. And then he begins to laugh.
Thank you, foolish mortal, for bringing me the tool. Dawnstar, that will bring the end to all.
And snap. The blade is shattered and souls begin flying everywhere. Turns out, on hindsight, I should have been paying attention. But to be fair, like, I was a magical swordsman. Or at least I thought I was a magical swordsman.
What is wrong with you? Were you dropped on your head?
Like a series of flashbacks from a mystery movie, it all began coming into place. Every mention of no blood, eyes rolling back with just pure white, the lacking of noises that my opponents were making. And one instance of me drawing blood where I beat someone to death with my bare hands and not a single bell was rung in my head. Eventually, the day was saved, the battle was won, but began the epic campaign of the body cleanup thanks to Richard. I'm pretty sure it had a better name, but everyone just kept calling it Richard's Fuck Up. At the end of it all, we began laughing, clapping, and cheering as we couldn't believe that Steve had held on to this information for so long. I would have cracked ages ago letting everyone know what was about to happen. But the importance of all of this is it's like recommending a mystery movie to someone. They're not going to get the joy out of it if you reveal the big twist that, you know, Fred, you know, the winking bartender is really the murderer. You know, just... and let it play out. But anyway, that's the story of Richard the Clean, or Richard the Dense, or how Welsh he is a freaking idiot. Anyway, thanks players and DMs for listening to me ramble, and hopefully I'll see you again. Take care of yourselves, and have a good one. Grabbed my dice, rolled. Natural 20. Which also, by the way, for the outtake, I actually rolled a fucking 20. That was just meant to be a sound effect.